Sechus Kiddushin Daf Ayin is a lengthy daf, which is mostly Agadata. The Gemara begins by focusing on our last Mishnah and how we know that each of the 10 Yuchsin mentioned there came to Eretz Yisrael from Bavel with Ezra. And the Gemara will spend much time discussing the Mamzer and the Midos of people who marry Psulim and how we can identify a Mamzer by his Midos, including a lengthy story with Rabbi Huda. So the Gemara begins discussing Gerim and Freed Avadim. How do we know that they came to Eretz Yisrael, says Rav Chisda? Because the pasuk says, "V'chol hanivdal mitumas goyei haaretz aleihem," and everyone who separated himself from the goyim came along with them, and that refers to those who converted and were freed avadim. Next, the Mishnah mentions Mamzerim. So Gemara says, how do you know that Mamzerim came to Eretz Yisrael in that group? So the Gemara tries a few sources here. The Gemara first says, because it says, Vayashma Sanvalat ha'chayoni v'tuvya ha'evet ha'amayni, that Sanbalat and Tuvya, who were Goyim, heard that they were leaving. Then afterwards it says, Ki Rabin Bihuda Bali Shualoi. Many people had sworn that they were faithful to Tuvya. Ki Chasantu Shachanya ben Arach, he was the son-in-law of Shachanya, and Yehochanan Benoi Lokach es Bas Meshulam ben Berechia. And Tuvya's son Yehochanan had married the daughter of Meshulam ben Berechia. So we see from the first pasuk that Tuvya was a slave. You see from the second one that he had a son named Yehochanan who married the daughter of Meshulam. So you see that an Eved married a Jewish woman, and this Tana holds that an Eved Kechavim, or an Eved who marries a Bas Yisrael, gives birth to a Mamzer. Therefore you see that there was a Mamzer amongst them. So the Gemara says, well, what are you going to do according to the opinion that the child of a Bas Yisrael and an Eved is not a Mamzer? And second of all, how do you know that there were any children born from this marriage? It doesn't say that children were there. Third kasha is, how do you know that the children were born in Bavel and then went to Eretz Yisrael? Maybe they were born in Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, the Gemara says we have to have a different source, and that's from a pasuk in Nehemiah, which says, "Ve'elo elu mitel melach tel charsha kruv adoin v'imer." These people that went up from tel melach tel charsha, kruv adoin and imer. And then it says, they could not say who their fathers were or what their source was, whether they were Jewish or not. So the Gemara says a drasha on this verse. Tel Melach refers to people who behave like Siddim, which was turned into a pile of salt. Tel Melach means a pile of salt. And therefore they were behaving like Siddimites, and they were behaving immorally, and therefore giving birth to Mamzerim. Tel Charsha refers to someone who doesn't know who his father is, what we call a shtuki, because his charsha means that his mother quiets him. And when he calls someone father, his mother says, that's not your father. And then the continued drasha is v'loyachul hagid as Beis Avosim v'zaram. That's a Sufi who couldn't say who Beis Avosim was, who their fathers were, or who Zaram were, who their mothers were. So you see there, all three sources came to Eretz Yisrael: the Mamzerim, the Shtuki, and the Asufi. Now, the Gemara's additional drasha on these psukim says, Rabbi Avo, the names Adon and Imer should be read as Omar Adon, the master of the world, said, referring to Hashem, that I said that Yisrael should be as Kruv, which is one of the names, and instead they made themselves like Imer, like a nomer, like a leopard, which is a wild animal, and therefore behaves in a wild and promiscuous manner. Now, a different version of this drasha is that Hashem said that even though they make themselves like the leopard, I still view them as the kruv, as being chashivas. Now, a third drasha here is Rabbi Bar Chana, who says anyone who marries a woman who is a apostle to him, the Torah refers to it as if he was charshai, as if he plowed the entire world, and he planted with salt instead of actual plants. It's with salt, and that's from Ve'el ha'elim bitel melach tel charsha, the drasha on melach and charsha. Now the Gemara goes into a list of drashas about people who enter forbidden marriages because of whatever personal reasons they may have. So Rabbi Baravada said that anybody who marries a woman who is not allowed to just because he wants the money that she has, he's going to end up having children that'll be psulim, obviously. And that's from Ba'ashem and Bagadu Kivanim Zarim Yiladu. Maybe we'll say at least they'll have the money from it, and therefore it says no, Ata Yochlim Chodesh Eschalkeim, that the month will devour whatever money they has. So maybe you'll think that he won't have his own money, but at least he'll have her money that he got from her. And therefore it says that Chelkehem, both his portion and her portion, will both be destroyed. Maybe you think it'll be destroyed after a while. It says no, Chodesh, it's going to be destroyed within a month. Now, Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, Chodesh Nichnas, Chodesh Yaitza, U'Mamayim Avad, within a month the money has been destroyed. Now, along these lines, Rabbi Bar Rav Ada said, or maybe it was Rav Sal, in the name of Rav Hamnuna, anyone who marries a woman who is not right for him, Eliyahu Navi ties him to a post, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu whips him. And we have a brisa that says that on all of these, Eliyahu writes, and a Kadosh Baruch Hu signs the following declaration: woe to him who disqualifies his children because of Pagam Mishpacha, and therefore he also makes a Pagam on his family because he marries a woman who is not Roy for him in Psul, in Kashrus. And part of the statement is that Eliyahu ties him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu whips him. And anyone who declares other people to be Psulim are Psulim themselves, and he never speaks in praise of others. And Shmuel says on that somebody who apostles others apostles in his own mum, that if he's often to call someone else a apostle, it is likely that he has that psul himself. Now the Gemara launches into a lengthy Maisa based on this statement of Shmuel. Shmuel had a Talmud named Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yecheskel, who was called across Shas just as Rabbi Yehuda, who was the Rosh Yeshiva in Pumbedisa. So the Maisa is that there was a man who came from Naharda to Pumbedisa, and he went to the butcher shop asking for some meat, and a shamish of Rabbi Yehuda was there, and they said to him, wait until he's finished, and then we'll give you the meat that you asked for. So he said, Yehuda Bar Cheskel, Yehuda Bar Shaviskel. He made fun of his name using a word which means a glutton, that he seems to like a lot of meat. Why should he get to go before me? So they went and they told Rabbi Yehuda what he had said, and Rabbi Yehuda put him into Cherem, as is the halacha for somebody who is mevazah tamid chachamim. And then he told Rabbi Yehuda that this person actually runs around calling people avodim, calling them slaves. So Rabbi Yehuda put out a statement that this guy from Naharda was actually a slave. So the guy went back to Naharda, to where Rav Nachman, who was a son-in-law of the Rish Galusa, was the Av HaVezdin, and he called Rav Yehuda to come to a din Torah. So a letter was brought to Rav Yehuda that he has to appear before Rav Nachman to Din Torah. Now Rav Yehuda, as the Rosh Yeshiva, was more chashav than Rav Nachman, therefore he didn't have to respond, but he wasn't sure if it would be a bezayin if he wouldn't go, so therefore he went to consult with Rav Huna, and Rav Huna said, Al Pidin, you don't have to go. However, for the honor of the Reish Galusa and the Nasi, you should go anyway. So Rav Yehuda went, and he came to Narda, and he found Rav Nachman was building a fence. Now Rabbi Yehuda wanted to make a point to him, wanted to show him that he had called someone who he wasn't within his authority to call. So he said, why are you building a fence? Don't you know what Rav Huna Bar Vidi says in the name of Shmuel? Once a person has a position of chashivas, he's forbidden to do work, to do menial labor in front of three people. So Rav Nachman said, I'm only making a small gunderisa. He used that word to mean fence. So Rabbi Yehuda said, why do you hate the word makeh, which is what the Torah calls a fence, or the word mechitza, which is what the Rabbanan call a fence? Why are you using a pretentious word like gunderisa? And this continued for a while with Rav Nachman using words and Rabbi Yehuda showing him that it's not the right word to use. So Rav Nachman said, why don't you sit down on the karfita, which is a bench? And Rabbi Yehuda said, do you hate the word safsel, which is what the chachamim use, or the word itztava, which is what the general population uses? Rav Nachman said, why don't you eat some esranga, which is an esrog? So he said, why? So Rabbi Yehuda quoted Shmuel, says anyone who says esranga is 1/3 of a bal gaiva, meaning he's in his speech, he's acting like the bal gaiva. You should either use the term esrog that the chachamim use, or the term esroiga that the hamayim use, but esroinga is not necessary. So Rabbi Nachman then said, would you like to drink some anvaga? drink, like coffee that people drink in the morning. So Rabbi Yehuda said, do you hate the word asparagus, which is what the Chachamim call, or the word anpak, which is what general people call? It's actually the name of the cup that the drink is poured into. So Rav Nachman said, let my daughter Doinag come and serve us. So Rabbi Yehuda said, it is forbidden to be served by a woman. So on that, Rav Nachman said, what do you mean? But she's just a ketana. So said Rav Yehuda, which Shmuel explicitly said that it's forbidden to make use of any woman, whether she's a Gedola or a Ketana. Rav Nachman said, would you like to send a greeting to Yalta? Yalta was Rav Nachman's wife. So Rav Yehuda said, Shmuel said, it's forbidden that we know that Kol B'Isha is Erva, and it's forbidden to greet a woman because you will end up hearing her voice. So Rav Nachman said, well, send it through a messenger. Rav Yehuda said, no. Shmuel said that that's forbidden even to send a greeting through a messenger to a woman. So Rav Nachman said, let's send it through her husband, meaning through me. Rav Yehuda said, but Shmuel said, one is not allowed to send greetings to a woman even through a husband. Now Rav Nachman, his wife Yalta, was learned, and she overheard this conversation, and she said to her husband Rav Nachman, you better solve the din Torah that he was brought here for and send him home, because otherwise he's making you look like a fool. So Rav Nachman said to Rav Yehuda, what brings you here? He had forgotten that he had sent a letter to call him to the din Torah, and Rav Yehuda said, what do you mean? You sent me a letter. So Rav Nachman said, if I don't even know how to talk to you, certainly I wouldn't have the chutzpah to send you a letter and inviting you or demanding that you come to a din Torah. So Rav Yehuda took the letter out of his pocket and he showed it to him. Here is the man, he said, and here is the letter. So Rav Nachman realized that he hadn't sent him the letter. So he said, look, obviously I'm not going to find you to be at fault here because of your level of learning, but we don't want people to say that the Chacham show favoritism to each other, so at least say your tainas so we could speak it out. So Rav Nachman began asking him, why did you put that person in Chayrim? So Yehuda says, because he was mitzaer, he caused pain to the Shlich D'Rabbanan, the messenger of the Chachamim. The halacha about a person like that is that he needs to be put into Chayrim. So Rav Nachman said he should have given him Malchus, because Rav would give Malchus to people who are mitzaer Shlich D'Rabbanan. So why didn't you do that? So Yehuda said, Malchus is not as strict as what I did, which is Chayrim, and you have the right to go up the ladder in the punishments that are given out to people like that. So Rav Nachman said, why did you announce that he's a slave, that he's an Eved? And Rav Yehuda said, because he keeps calling other people Avadim, and we have a brisa that says, Kol Pasul, anyone who calls people by a certain psal has a psal himself, and never speaks in praise of other people, like we said. And Shmuel said that it's actually his own psal, called pasul, but mumei pasul, and therefore I know that he must be an Eved. So Rav Nachman said, one second, maybe Shmuel only said that you can be choishish that he's that, but to actually make a statement, berabim, that's what he is, how do you know that? So they asked the person himself who was there, what do you say? And he said to Yehuda, how can you call me an Eved? I come from the house of the Chashmonaim, the Chashuvim who are kings, the Chashmonaim. So Yehuda said, aha. Shmuel himself said, anybody who comes from the family of the Chashmonaim is actually an Eved, because of the story that happened in the beginning of Masechas Bava Basra, where Hordus, who was an Eved of the Chashmonaim, rebelled against him and killed them all, left one girl alive, and she jumped off the roof and said, I'm the last one, and here I'm about to die. Anyone who says that he's from the house of the Chashmonaim is an Eved. So on that, Rav Nachman said to Rav Yehuda, don't you agree with the halacha that Rav Abbas and the name of Rav Huna, that any Talmid Chacham who says a halacha and then wants to bring a proof from a Maisa, so that's not a valid proof. The proof is only valid if he said the Maisa before he said the halacha. You can't bring a Maisa as a proof to a halacha. So Rav Yehuda said, but you can ask Rav Masna, because Rav Masna heard this from Shmuel as well, and therefore he could corroborate that Shmuel really said this, even though I quoted it afterwards. So the Gemara relates that Rav Masna had not been in Nahardam 13 years, but that day Punkt happened to be there. And they called him, and Rav Yehuda said, do you remember what Shmuel said when he had one foot on the river and one foot on the boat? Masa he said as follows, anybody who says, I come from the house of the Chashmonaim is an Eved, because no one remained except for the girl, and she jumped off the roof, and she said, anyone who says that they come from Chashmonaim is an Eved, and then she jumped off and she died. So Rav Nachman therefore put out a decree, he paskin, and he put out an announcement that this person really was an Eved, and a lot of ksubas ended up being torn up that day because everyone from his family was also by extension declared to be an Eved, and all their marriages were declared a mekach tois, and they were voided, and all those women lost a ksuba. So Rabbi Yehuda left to go back home, and the people followed him to stone him. They were all carrying rocks because of all the trouble that he caused in town. So Rabbi Yehuda said, you better be quiet and leave me alone, because if you're not, I'm going to announce what Shmuel said about you. There are two families in this town. One is called Yoina, one is called Orvasi. Yoina is a kosher bird, and Orva is a non-kosher bird. And Shmuel said it's a simon that the Orvasi is a Tameh family, and they are psulim. And I'm going to share, if you don't leave me alone, I'm going to say who this family of Orvasi is, and then you're going to deserve what you get. So they left him alone, and they all threw their rocks away, and they all fell into the Malka River, and it actually were so many rocks that it blocked up the river. Now the Gemara discusses other things which Rabbi Yehuda said. They said that Ada and Yonason are slaves, Yehuda bar Papa is a mamzer, and Bati bar Tuvia did not accept a ksav, a get shechur, and therefore he's an eved as well. Rava said in Mecheza, Bale denai talai malai and zagae are all psulim, and you cannot marry them. Other things which we learned about psulim, Rabbi Yehuda said that the people that are called Givae are actually Givainim, which are what we call Nesinim, and the town called Durnunisa comes from the word Dura Nesini, meaning that the people who live there are Nesinim. Rabbi Yosef said that the people of Bekubi in Pumbedisa are all descended from Avadim. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, there were 400 or perhaps 4,000 slaves that belonged to Pashra, the son of Imer, and all of them came mixed in with Kahuna, pretending to be Kahanim because they were Avadim of Kahanim, and they were eating Truma, and therefore they managed to fool people into thinking they were actual Kahanim. So therefore, any Kayan who is a Chutzpahyak is from them, because the Midah of Chutzpah comes from being a puzzle like this. Now, Abaye said that these people all live in a row in Naharda. Some discussion amongst the Rishonim. What does it mean to live in a row in Naharda? Naharda wasn't necessarily around. At that time, it may refer to a row in the yeshiva of Shmuel, which is called the Naharda row. Now, Shmuel argues in Rav Elazar, who Rav Elazar says just because you see a midah of chutzpah in Kahanim doesn't mean that he's descended from Avadim, because Kahanim naturally have a midah of chutzpah, even if they are ksherim. Like it says, V'amcha kimirive kayin, your people argue like Kahanim. Now, going back to the discussion about people who marry psulim, and that they shouldn't. So the Gemara quotes of Avin bar Rav Ada, the name of Rav. Anyone who marries a woman who's palsim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be Masha Shechina on Klal Yisrael, he will testify about the kashrus of all the families except for that person. Like it says, Shiftika Eidus Li Yisrael, when the tribes of Hashem have Eidus for Yisrael, that it will only be Eidus when they are tribes of Hashem. It says when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Masha Shechina, meaning when the Yemais HaMashiach come on the families in Kaisa, it will only be on those that are pure, those that are miyuchis. Like it says, Hashem Elikim L'chol Mishpachos Yisrael, that I will be a God only for the Mishpachos Yisrael, only for those that are pure families of Yisrael, but not to others. Now, Rabba bar Rav Huna said that this is a mila that Jews that are Jewish from birth have over Geirim, because about Yisrael, it says, Vayisi lahem le'elikim v'hem. First, I'll be to them as a God, and they will be my people. But as far as the Geirim, they have to come forward first, like it says, Miza arves liboy legeshes elai no Hashem, who draws near close to me, v'yisem lila'am v'neichi elachem le'elikim. And then you will be my people, and then I will be your God. More about the Geirim, Rechelbe says, Geirim are harmful to regular Yisrael as a pachas, like it says, V'nova garleim v'nispechu beis Yaakov, and the Geirim will go with them and stick to them, v'nispechu, but he uses the word v'nispechu, which is similar to the word sapachas, sa'is, and sapachas, which is a type of tsaras.